Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to RaceSpotTV and welcome back to 60-plus racing adventures. This is round number 8 for the GT3s, coming to you today from Twin Ring Motegi. My name is Ron Mons, all by myself as it stands at the moment in the commentary booth. We also got Hugo Luis Calmon working on the cameras in the virtual production hauler, but here with some fantastic GT3 racing action from 60-plus racing adventures. This is going to be some fun. My second time covering this series. The first time was all the way back at the end of 2024 with a rather different style of racing, NASCAR trucks action at Dover. So this is going to be rather different, but it's just one more race from this fantastic GT3 series. You can see round number 8 here at Motegi. This is the one and only broadcasted race from this season. However, look at the rest of the tracks to follow throughout the season. Donington Park, Phillip Island, Montreal, Circuit Gilles Villeneuve up there in Canada, and Okayama to bring this season to a close, returning to Japan exactly 1 month after this race that we've got here today. It's been a brilliant season thus far, and let's take a quick look at the championship point situation. David Riley leading it at the moment, 269 points on the board, only 3 back to Franz Josef Stum, 266. That is just about as close as you can get. I mean, you can get a little bit closer, but I feel like if these drivers were a bit more closer, they'd probably have blood pressure a heck of a lot higher than it probably already is. Peter Hallstrom currently slotted in third at 243 points, my apologies. Then you go 3 back to find John Payne. Greg Gilman rounding out your top 5 in the GT3 series standings. You can see the rest of your drivers lined up there, notably Gilman and Roberto De Filippi's tied at 233 points, 1 separating Di Pasquale and Eugene Clark, 225 to 224. Then you only have to go 2 back from Clark to find John Hay, currently slotted in 9th. Ragnar Wilsoff at 211, and then another tie to round out your top 12 with Gianni Respaldo and Jerry Kerr. So that's 203 for those 2 drivers. So a brilliantly close championship, and looking like a very close qualifying session right now. Look at that, the time between our 2 provisional front row sitters as it stands at the moment. It was but 5,000ths of a second, and now it's only 100 with Di Pasquale grabbing that provisional pole over Ricardo Aletta in the number 88 car. So looking at these drivers still in this qualifying session right now, only a tick under 3 minutes left of this qualifying session. These drivers have 2 laps to get the job done in this solo qualifying session. 10 minutes though at their disposal gives them plenty of time to get their bearing straight and give themselves a good feeling as to the pace they're going to be carrying into this race that we have coming up. And what a race we have in store. 40 minutes long is going to be the race length here today. And looking at the weather conditions as it stands currently, rather good conditions as it stands right now. It'd be a very nice spring day in Japan. 68 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not sure exactly how that works out to be in Celsius. I'll have to pull up that conversion here in the not too distant future. Track temperature though currently at 111 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's rather toasty for these drivers. So those tires may be screeching in agony come time for the end of this 40-minute long race that we have coming up. There's the Celsius, so 20 Celsius and 44 Celsius for the track temperature. Either way, though, very hot. We'll say it's not the hottest track conditions I've ever seen. I was doing a broadcast a couple of weeks ago, and I think it was I think it was 138 degrees was the track temperature, something insane like that. I was sweating bullets just from our perspective of the commentary booths. I can't even imagine how the drivers were feeling all throughout that race. But this race certainly going to be a good one. 40 minutes around this track, which has 14 corners in all. Twin Ring Motegi, one of the most fascinating circuits in the world, in my view. Twin Ring, not really the name of the track anymore. It's now called Mobility Resort Motegi, but Twin Ring Motegi, that's what I grew up with. It rolls off the tongue like rich gooey molasses. And this track, the road course we're running at, just a tick under 3 miles long, shadowed by the disused oval, which has been out of use ever since 2011. Sadly, the rather severe earthquakes and tsunamis that inflicted Japan all those years ago shattered the asphalt of the oval, prevent IndyCar from using that oval layout that they had been since the 90s. So for the final ever IndyCar race in Japan, as it stands currently, back in 2011, they ran on this road course configuration. But this road course is still a fun one. Motegi uses it every single year, and of course going to be used for this GT3 race that we've got going on right now. Following David Riley right now, he's currently qualified in 7th in the number 14 car, finds himself 0.6 of a second off of your pole sitter of De Pasqua. So let's see how that's going to shake out between now and the end of this session, which is coming up very, very quickly. So this is certainly going to be a fun race for these drivers. And as we switch the aerial view of this wonderful motorsports facility, should probably be a good time as this time is running out in this qualifying session. Water. Remember to stay hydrated, folks, especially if you're doing a show all by yourself. But it's still gonna be a fun one. And speaking of fun, let's get the fun underway by taking a look at the starting grid. Remaggio De Pasqua, the Italian, in the number 4 car, will be starting this race from the pole. Riccardo Alida will join him on the front row. Franz Josef Stum going to be starting this race in 3rd next to Russ Addy, the PA native, in the 111 car. Starting this race in 5th is going to be Greg Gilman. Starting in 6th alongside will be Kenneth Dummer. Looking at the final drivers we have inside the top 10, we've got David Riley in 7th, Roberto De Filippis in 8th. Then starting this race in 9th, we have Leith Hellberg, Mike Grandi going to round out your top 10. Then we have Jack Turner in 11th. Gianni Raspaldo will start this race in 12th. Eugene Clark will be starting in lucky number P13. And then we have Peter Hallstrom starting in 14th. Earl Setzer starting in P15. Jerry Kerr in 16th. And David Bradley rounding out your 17-car grid, set to take the green in the not too distant future. You can see the cars lined up at this point in time, waiting to get this half formation lap underway. The formation lap, the shortened one that we will be using, going to be starting in the small O flat app. I say small O flat app list. It's actually the longest flat app list on the entirety of this lap, between the hairpin at turn number 10 and the downhill, really tough but also really appealing overtaking opportunity of turn number 11. That downhill, really tough right-hander, certainly going to be a trouble spot for these drivers. But turn 1, not going to be anything to scoff at either. The opening corners of this track are rather difficult to try and psych at. There's been many an incident around those corners in real life. I believe there's a pretty big one in Super Formula a couple years ago, in which a driver had a rather wild ride. I think it may have been Liam Lawson who ended up flipping in that race. So certainly hoping that we don't have a case of deja vu here today. It takes a lot of strength to flip one of these GT3 race cars, but we're nearing the end of this formation lap, and after this, we got 40 minutes of racing action in front of you. So happy all of you can tune in to this broadcast on RaceSpot here today, and let's wait for that green flag to come out. A little bit disorganized at the front with that pace car making the turn to come down pit lane. The field now in the hands of our pole sitter. The green flag is out, and the drivers are on their way. And it's a very odd start at the front of the field, but it's going to be De Pasqua holding on to the lead, heading his way through turn number 1. A little bit of a kerfuffle, a little bit farther behind. Multiple cars going off the track, trying to see who that is going off the circuit. I believe that was Mike Grandi and Kenneth Drummer who got involved in that action a little bit farther towards the back, hang their way through turns number 1 and 2. Look at some side-by-side racing into 3 and 4 right now. Russ Addy currently running in 3rd in front of this man, the number 1 car, Roberto De Filippis. He had to withstand a challenge from Franz Josef Strum a couple of moments ago, but they get through rather clean. But looking at this, side-by-side racing, about to head their way off into turn number 5. Not close enough to get the job done. This is one of 2 spots on this track where they pass under the oval. That's the back straightaway that they just went under right now. Now heading through one of the fastest sections of this course into turn number 7 right now. This is such a hard corner to try and get right, slightly off camber. You've got the elevation change to deal with as well. Through turn number 8 right now, the long, seeming like they simply do not end sweepers in the mid sector of this lap. Now into turn number 9, but this coming up is turn 10, the hairpin, one of the premier overtaking opportunities around this track, but you need to get done with authority, otherwise you're going to be a sitting duck heading down the back straightaway that follows right after it. But looking at these drivers negotiating the first lap clean, lots of them doing it well. I believe the only drivers who've been struck by a falling anvil thus far happen to be Mike Grandi in the number 12 car, Frank Butler and Kenneth Drummer rounding out the 19 cars currently classified at this very early point in this 40-minute 40-minute long race. Not even 2 minutes on the board. We haven't completed the first lap, but it's still going to be a rather hectic start. It's going to be Remigio De Pasqua leading that first lap. Ricardo Altia going to be slotted in P2, 1.2 seconds, 1.3 seconds back, and Russ Addy running at your podium in third as it stands at the end of this first lap. And you can see a car going off the track a little bit farther in the back. That, I believe, may have been Frank Butler in the 852 car. So not entirely sure what happened to him. Gonna maybe load up a replay to see exactly what went wrong with that Porsche. And looking at it, it was heading through the final chicane where that off-track excursion happened. But either way, these drivers learning the difficulty of Mugello Motegi very, very early on. Look at that. That was the collision involving Kenneth Dummer, my apologies, heading his way into turn number 1, getting hit like a snare drum heading through the corner. And here's the incident involving Frank Butler, spins off the track into the gravel trap. Thankfully, though, avoids contact with any more cars, so no harm, no foul in that regard. Either way, though, not the way he wants to get this race underway at all. But looking at some drivers continuing to fight, we got a little pack forming right now involving Roberto De Filippi's, Frank Joseph Stum, and Greg Gilman. Those 3 cars separated by about 0.7 of a second, heading their way through turn number 9 right now. And you only have to go a little bit farther back to find the number 14 Acura of David Riley. So this field rather vacuum sealed together as it stands at the moment. You can really see these drivers and their different mindsets in terms of how to tackle the early stages of this race. We'll note that JC Hay has had some sort of off-track excursion in the number 89 car. He's out of this race completely, so that's going to be our first retirement from this 40-minute long race here from the 60 Plus Racing Adventures GT3 season 33 of this championship. Lots of these drivers have been around for many of these moons, and let's see JC Hay. That was a hardware failure for sure. Bang into the outside wall, cut through the infield. Let's listen in. Yeah, you can see that had to have been some sort of hardware failure with his brake pedal. Bang into the wall. That's going to take the number 89 car out of this race. It's unfortunate, but it's a way that real life and sim racing can kind of mirror each other in a way. You can put a whole lot into your real life racing adventures and just have a small little like $5 part failure decide your fate in that race. And even in the sim racing world, stuff like that can happen. It's unfortunate either way, but JC Hay going to be the first retirement in this race. 18 cars still left out there on the racetrack though, and a lot of them are close to each other. Side by side racing certainly being proof of that, as Frank Joseph Stum tried to get a move done on Roberto De Filippi's, but he was not close enough and went off the track heading through turn number 5. Got to lose that on a spot to Greg Gilman in the number 92 car, so that's going to drop the number 34 car back into 6th. David Riley, who we see right now just hoving in view in that number 14 Acura, he's going to get involved in that fight as well. I'm looking through as we've got the graphic up right now. A driver who's been on a run is Roberto De Filippi's, up 4 spots from where he started in this race, certainly proving that with that number 1 on his car, he is proving himself to be the number 1 overtaker. Still very early on into this race though, just ticked over the halfway, not the halfway mark, just ticked over halfway to the first quarter, an eighth of the way in this race. We were still far away from the halfway mark, but this race has definitely settled into a groove right now. De Pasqua is still leading it over Altia. Russ Addy rounding out your podium in 3rd, and you could see nearly maybe going for a move was David Riley on Franz Joseph Strum. Not close enough though, heading off into turn number 11. Turn 11, really good spot to try and get a move done, but if you just get it wrong a teeny tiny bit, you're going to be in for a world of trouble. I think these drivers certainly happy about the fact these GT3 cars do have ABS, because heading down to a corner like that in these big, hefty, and bulky GT3 race cars, very easy to snag a wheel in the braking zones. Let's take a look at a replay of Jack Turner in the number 55 car making his run to come into the pits. Let's see, not up on the jacks. He gets driven through by the Corvette as actually, I apologize, this is not a replay, this is the live action of Turner coming down into the pits, being joined by Mike Grandy in the number 12 car. I was curious why Jack Turner was losing out on a couple of spots. Now it turns out the reason why that is the case is because he was eyeing up a pit stop very early to come into the pit lane. But hey, if you can make it to the checkered flag, that's all that matters at the end of the day. Looking at some drivers though all throughout this field, slowly but surely spreading out. Take a quick little sip of water there. Again, folks, remember to stay hydrated, even if you aren't on the air. Water, just absolute godsend. I wish I, as a middle schooler, realized how good water was, because I was fatter than the Michelin Man back when I was in middle school. It's a good thing that I built up my on-air career at a time where my face wasn't incredibly puffed up like an airbag. So that's good news for everybody, I guess. Good news for the viewing audience for sure. David Riley, though, just had a big sideways snap coming at turn number 9 a couple of moments ago. Under the power and just loses it a teeny tiny bit. Doesn't lose out on a boatload of time, though, as we're riding on board with a car who's still right behind him. This is Leif Hellberg in the number 13 car, running an 8th right now and following Riley in that Acura. We'll note the Acura, while the newest car is onto the iRacing platform, and I gotta say, it's a pretty looking car as well, seeing that running in the 7th spot as it stands currently, albeit I may be a little bit biased. I just like the color blue, but we got a lot of different manufacturer representation. We'll applaud iRacing at this point in time for the new life that's been breathed into GT3 racing on the service, as we see Jerry Kerr come into the pit in the 199 Porsche. He's currently running in 14th as it stands at the moment. Let's see how he exits at compared to some of the drivers who already came into the pits earlier on, as we go back to the action. The car's still out there on the racetrack and not down pit lane. I'll wrap the bow around the point I was going to raise a couple of moments ago. Well done to iRacing for bringing in so many new GT cars. I took a brief sabbatical from iRacing, as I didn't have a functioning PC that allowed me to drive in the sim, and between then, all of the GT3 cars that I had were rendered pretty much entirely useless. They were all part of legacy content by the time I came back. So the original generation of the Mercedes GT3 car, that was completely moved over to legacy content by the time that I came back into iRacing at the old Porsche. It's been fantastic to see iRacing bring in so many new GT3 cars, and even in the prototype ranks as well, bringing in the Porsche 963, the Cadillac, the Acura, the BMW, and most recently the Ferrari. Would be really nice to see them bring in some other ones as well. Hint iRacing, that'd be very cool, albeit I'm a bit biased because I'm a prototype guy. But nevertheless, as I wrap the bow around that, talking about bringing in more manufacturers into iRacing, let's talk about this battle that's certainly heating up between Roberto De Filippis and Greg Gilman. Gilman applying that pressure expertly to the back of the number 1 car, as you can see him going off the track, heading through turn number 11 a few moments ago. Filippis obviously very fast, just based off the fact he's still the hard charger still early on in this race. But Gilman certainly applying that pressure very well in that number 92 car, but he's trying to keep tabs with him as well, running a little bit wide into turn number 1 is probably not what he had in mind. That section, it is technically 2 corners, however, it feels more like 1 since they're so close together. This section, though, it's this is 3 and 4, and it's just the 2 corners are just spread apart enough whereby it feels like 2 corners, but it's not smooth enough to feel like just 1 corner, but it's also not far enough apart whereby it feels like 2 completely different corners. You just straighten the wheel up a teeny tiny bit, and then you're back going into the corner. Your outside tires despise you regardless of what kind of car you're driving around this track when you head through 3 and 4. But it's still a wonderful track. I kid. I absolutely love Motegi. Remember driving on this track on Forza Motorsports 4 back in the day when I was in elementary school, and some very fond memories, to be sure. And I'm sure these drivers are making memories of their own driving around this absolutely wonderful track and giving us some good battles to talk about right now. We've got 2 retirements now from this race, as Frank Butler has called it quits in the 852 car as well. So Jerry Kerr in the 199, currently your last place runner. He came into the pits a couple of moments ago, though, so that may not be entirely genuine for sure. But looking at this field at this point in time, a little bit spread out. We got some battles, though, that are forming as we take a look to see Frank Butler. That was same spot that he went off the track earlier on, and you can see based off the fact the front of the car was propped up, I guess the right rear tire deciding to go on strike and break off of that car as a result of that wall contact. That, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, was through the final sector of this course. That was in the turn 12, 13, and 14 section to bring this lap to a conclusion, which is such a tough section. He went off there earlier on, and Looks like he goes 2 for 2, and sadly that's going to take him out of this race. 12 minutes coming up to on the board, 28 left to go, as we see Peter Hallstrom, the number 33 car, make his call to come into the pits at the front of the field. Now, Di Pasqua is just absolutely dominant in the early stages of this race, extending that gap now to 5 seconds between himself and Ricardo Alida. So that is a rather big gap for sure in that number 4 McLaren. Another one of the newer GT3 cars added into the service, added just a couple of seasons ago, and that is an absolutely stunning race car. And here's another stunning car that just caused my jaw to drop on the floor when I got first introduced into iRacing back in 2023. The Ferrari, I can't even say the new Ferrari anymore, just the Ferrari. I believe it's the 288 GT3, but it's just an absolutely brilliant looking car with a rather nice looking Pennzoil livery on it as well. But the drive the number 33 car of Hallstrom, while the latest to come into the pits in this race, and let's see if let's see how these drivers are going to tackle the pit strategy deal in this race. Are they going to try and stretch it all the way up until the checkered flag, or are they going to just try and split 50-50 and come in exactly 20 minutes in with 20 to go? Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. I will say, though, we've been waiting and seeing this battle for fourth still developing between Roberto Di Filippi's Greg Gilman dropping back a teeny tiny bit, now 0.7 of a second between those two cars. He also got friends Joseph Strum, David Riley, and Leif Hellberg, involved in that battle as well. Hellberg dropping back a teeny tiny bit, though, so that's really a 4-car battle as it stands at the moment. Certainly won't throw any shade towards a 4-car battle, though, because it's always good to see, as we see Earl Setzer in the 155 McLaren make that call to come into the pits as well. Water, an absolute broadcaster's favorite, as we still see this racing go on. And thank you very much, Hugo, for the information. It's a 296 GT3. So tuning in, folks, for the forgetful host not knowing the number of the car, and the producer, who's a heck of a lot smarter than I am, correcting me. Thank you very much. I knew it was in the 2s, I just didn't know for sure. So the 296 GT3 car, an absolute gem on the iRacing platform. That'd be an interesting discussion to have. Maybe may have to have something on the Bathurst 12-hour broadcast, which RaceSpot will be a part of in a couple of weeks, to see what is the prettiest and what is the best fan favorite GT3 car in terms of looks. Not even in terms of the way they drive, just in terms of the way the cars look. That'd be an interesting little discussion. Hopefully that wouldn't just completely start off a firestorm in the live chat, and fingers crossed that won't be the case. And who knows? I think that would be a pretty fun discussion. I know lots of people have their own opinions about what cars they like the most in terms of the way they look and the way they drive, as we see these drivers certainly driving their cars to the best of their abilities. Filippi's slowly but surely building that gap between himself and Gilman. We saw Gilman give him a little bit of a challenge in that number 1 car a couple laps ago. However, that challenge, I wouldn't say has cooled off, as they're still covered by less than a second hang their way through turn number 1 and 2 right now. But Gilman just dropping back a teeny tiny bit in that number 92 Porsche. So let's see how he will be able to manage the rest of this race. And let's see if he'll slowly but surely fall back into the crutches of Franz Joseph Strum as well. It's about teetering around that 9 to 8 tenths of a second barrier between the cars running in 5th and 6th. So may have to talk about that come time for the end of this race. Who knows? Only time will tell. I think I've said that a lot throughout this broadcast. But hey, it's racing. The amount of times that I've been on the air and predicted one thing was going to happen, only for the drivers and the iRacing gods to just throw a complete curveball my way and play me like a fiddle. It's happened a lot, and that's why I'm always like, yeah, only time will tell. It's racing, things can happen. So certainly expecting a lot of stuff to come down between now and the end of this race. And in terms of stuff coming down, we're hoping it's not a meteor, and instead it's just going to be a flurry of pit stops for these drivers who have yet to make that call. It's been a couple laps since we saw a driver make that call to come into pit lane. So who knows, we may be we may be running a little bit late, behind schedule possibly, in terms of all of these drivers. And looking at this point in time, I think I should probably maybe. I'm trying to think now. That's probably why you can smell the smoke here in the commentary booth. I'm thinking too hard. My brain's starting to cook itself. I will like to share, as we're at this midpoint of the race, coming up to the midway mark in about 2 3/4 minutes time. I want to talk about the driver running in third of Russ Addy in the 111 car. We haven't talked about him too much. That's mainly because he's been running effectively in no man's land in that Rexy-inspired 111 purple magenta. Not too sure. I wasn't great in art class. Either way, though, the Porsche running in third at this point in time, being driven by Russ Addy. And I want to share that Russ Addy is someone who I know personally, and it was fun to see him in this race. Russ, his son was a competitor who I raced against back when I used to drive in go-karts when I was a kid. So his son Griffin was in the higher classes to me, and they had this absolutely stunning 2003 Sodi kart with a Briggs & Strand World Formula engine to it, which was in the other kind of karting I did, which was autocross in the Sports Car Club of America, for any two viewers tuning into this broadcast that were curious about that note. But they had this absolutely stunning kart, and every single time it showed up to an event in the Philadelphia region, which I used to race in, they would just absolutely clean clock. They would come in every now and then and just blow everyone's metaphorical doors off. So by the end of the 2015 season, I was still a very young kid, and I decided you know what, I should see how I fit in the, actually, I say I decided, my dad decided for me that you should sit in that kart, see how it is, see how you're feeling it. So did that, and all was well. This kid Griffin was a couple years older than me, so he was going to be graduating out of that kart into, I think that he ended up driving a Honda S2000, I think it was. Not entirely sure. Russ may have to fact check me on that. And if I'm blabbering on for too much about this, folks, I apologize, but it's nice to share a small little story from my childhood. I mean, I'm alone here in the commentary booth. I gotta keep myself entertained somehow. But fast forward a couple of months, my dad, along with one of his close friends, was like, hey, we're going to be going on this trip out to like the middle of Pennsylvania, out in Lancaster with the Amish, to go get some fireworks. So we're going to be bringing the kart trailer with us. So I was like, okay, you guys want me to come with? I was like, okay, cool, road trip. And then we go on this road trip, and it felt like it was taking a million years. It felt like the longest road trip I had ever been a part of. So my 2015, God, how old was I? I think I was 10 at that point in time, turning 11 that year. So I was like, oh my God, this trip is taking forever. And then it's like, okay, we're coming up to the fireworks soon. Then we get to the fireworks place, and we're met by Russ and his son Griffin, and we ended up buying that kart. So Russ was the owner of the second ever kart that I got. So seeing his name in this race is rather fun. Very funny how the world works. Small world after all. But he's currently running in third as it stands at the moment. I think having the camera attention on him may have brought him into this battle a teeny tiny bit, as he's slowly but surely reeling in the driver of the 088 car of Ricardo Almeida. So let's see if we could have a battle between these two between now and the checkered flag. The checkered flag coming up in 19 and a half minutes time. We are officially past the halfway mark of this 40-minute long race. And to those tuning in to this RaceSpot broadcast here today, I hope you've enjoyed my podcast thus far with the racing action going on. Some pit stops going on as well. Russ Addy coming into the pits along with the number 92 Porsche of Greg Gilman. So here we go. These are the first drivers running solidly inside the top 10 to make that call to come into the pits. So the strategy that I kind of alluded to earlier on about some drivers maybe deciding to split it halfway and come in right as the halfway mark was passed, seeming that has actually come to fruition. As you can see, Addy now now out and away. Greg Gilman going to be stopped for a little bit more. So the duo of Porsches now out and away. Gilman going to be hitting that pit speed line right about now. Russ Addy still out and away, exiting it in 9th. Gilman going to be exiting out in the final spot, still inside the top 10. I gotta wonder as to whether or not we're going to see the driver of the number 4 car, our race leader of Remigio De Pasqua, decide to shadow that call in the not too far off future, or if we will see the second place runner of Alita shadow that call as well. So let's see how it's going to work out between now and the end of this race, with 18 minutes now left on the clock. And just taking a quick little breather right now. You can see based off the graphic that we've got on screen right now. Thank you very much, Hugo, for this. The top 8 runners yet to come into the pits. Eugene Clark in the number 73 car is the lowest down of the drivers yet to come into the pits, running in the 8th spot as it stands at the moment. However, they have a fight on his hands between himself and Gianni Raspaldo in the not too distant future. Those two cars covered by practically nothing, heading their way off into turn number 10 right now. Oh, and you can see running a little bit wide. This is going to be the shot that Eugene Clark is going to try and capitalize on. Side by side, and they were briefly side by side, heading down this back straightaway off into turn at number 11. But despite having a big sideways snap from Raspaldo, it looked like Eugene Clark had to check up pretty bad as well. That number 73 Corvette that's going to allow the challenge from Clark to not stick for now, as Raspaldo going to make that call to come into the pit, spearing off the track in a pit entry that in my entire time driving around this circuit I don't think I've ever hit, so that may just be a skill issue from my head. Very good reason why I'm behind the microphone instead of behind the wheel, but nevertheless, looking at these drivers so at their on track, that's going to make it now that the top 7 drivers have yet to come down pit lane. These 2 drivers have, though. This is a fight involving Kenneth Dummer in the 07 McLaren. We saw him get involved in an incident at the very start of the race, hang his way through turn number 1. He's now going to try and get involved in a fight with himself in the number 55 of Jack Turner. Side by side racing going to flare up between these two as Raspaldo going to exit behind them. Dummer going to get that move done into turn number 1 to slip his way up into P11 in front of Turner. Well done to Dummer. That was a textbook move, but still stuck nevertheless. And looking all throughout this field, I have a feeling that we're going to have some battles very much so flare up as a result of the still impending pit stops for the final drivers yet to come in. The drivers running in the top 7 as it stands currently. My question is, who's going to be the next to break off? I have a feeling it may end up being Franz Joseph Stump, because he's been running very good in that number 34 car, but he just hasn't really had the gusto to get past anyone else. He hasn't had the momentum, hasn't had the speed, or maybe he's just been playing the patient waiting game and deciding to hold back instead of attack. So let's see if the driver currently running in 4th will be the next to come down pit lane, or who knows, maybe all the drivers in the top 7 gonna play me like a fiddle and stay out for a couple more laps. Coming up now to 15 minutes left on the clock in this 40-minute long race. Man, time flies when you are having fun. This has been a pretty fun race to cover thus far, and hopefully all the viewers tuning into this broadcast have enjoyed it. And if you have, how about you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss out on any of the racing action here on RaceSpot, because it's not only daily, it is multiple times a day. So RaceSpot, your one-stop shop for everything that iRacing has to offer. Man, I kind of sound like I was doing a commercial there a couple of moments ago. How about them apples? Riding on board with Peter Hallstrom in the number 33 cars, we go to the action for this battle right towards the tail end of the top 5. David Riley holding on to that final spot in the top 5 right now, slowly but surely reeling in Stum in the number 34 car. They've broken away a little bit from the back of Felipe, so that's going to cool off that battle a teeny tiny bit, but still a battle for 4th, and these drivers are battling their minds, and still trying to think about their inevitable call to come into the pits. It has to happen at some point. When these drivers are going to do it, though, is the big, great, unknown mystery that is certainly riding on these drivers' minds all throughout this race. This is Oh boy, a race which has seen some good battles all throughout the field, some clean battles as well. Outside of a couple incidents here and there, it's been a rather spotless race, and fingers crossed we'll be able to keep that run all the way through until the checkered flag. Trying to do the quick math in my head as we see, oh, look at that. That was a last-minute call from David Riley to follow Franz Joseph Stum into pit lane. But there we go. These two coming in as a pair, and they're going to be joined by Leif Hellberg in the number 13 car. So this is it, a big chunk of the final 7 to come down pit lane. That's going to leave just 4. See, I can do math from time to time. And let's see who's going to win out in this battle of the pits. Not going to be David Riley, though, as he just overshot his pit stall, and that's going to cost him a boatload of time. I was going to say, who's going to win between himself and Stum? He's still going to win out over Stum. Wow, that is a very quick run in the pits for David Riley. Stum, on the other hand, a lot slower. I was fully, I mean, I had put my eggs in the basket. I was like, yep, he's not going to win out because he overshot his pit stall. But no, the number 14 Acura going to exit out in front of Stum. That's going to be for net P4 in this race as a result of the still going on pit stops. That's going to be actually, I say P4. It was going to be a move for P4 as they were when they came into the pits, but Russ Addy, who was in front of them earlier on, has exited out and shaken out in front of them as a result of this run through the pits. But still, Riley, I'm a little bit surprised by that. That number 14 car, his mechanics must have been chugging a whole lot of Red Bull to be able to do something like that. That was very, very quick indeed. But this is not going to be quick for Russ Addy, trying to dispatch of the not lapped car of Eugene Clark. Remember, folks, because of the ongoing cycle of pit stops, this is a battle for position between Clark, who's inherited P4, and Russ Addy, who was running a P3 earlier on in the race, trying to get back up into that spot as we still await the drivers farther up to make that call to come into the pits. But Russ Addy certainly proving himself to be a very quick driver as it stands currently in the 111 car. And let's see if this pace that he's shown after the pit stop is going to allow him to maybe reel in Alita for P2, or possibly even catch up to Di Pasqua for the race lead. I have a feeling that's probably not going to be the second one, but getting the move done on Alita, certainly not out of the realm of possibilities. That's going to be a rather tantalizing prospect for Russ Addy if he can hold on and show off the same amount of pace that he's had in the first 29 minutes of this race. Let's see if he can carry that momentum through the final 11. Eugene Clark going to come into the pits in the number 73 Corvette. That's going to leave just the top 3 yet to come into the pits. And let's see who's going to be the next to join them down pit lane as we stay with this battle involving Franz Joseph Strum, who's gotten that move done on David Riley. He also got Leif Hellberg, who had a rather quick run to the pits in his own regard, the number 13 car, to get involved in this battle quite a lot. As you can see, I don't have a good feeling about that. Riley overshooting it a lot. Heading down to turn number 11, getting a terrible exit, and that's going to allow Franz Joseph Stump to pick up the pieces and get that move done to slip in front of Riley. That's for P6 as it stands currently. And here's the battle right behind between Hellberg and that shadowy number 13 McLaren, trying to get done on that sparkly and shiny number 14 Acura. They're side by side heading through the braking zone into turn number 5 a couple of moments ago, but now exiting 6 into turn number 7. Now they are single file and losing out on a bit of time to Franz Joseph Strum in the process as well. Now about a second and a half between those two cars, so really speaking volumes about how a small little battle could drag some of these cars down as if they were dragging an asphalt. Dragging an anchor through asphalt. Second tries a charm there. Alita coming into the pits, though, in the 088 car, so that's going to maybe drop him back behind Russ Addy. Roberto Di Filippi's joining him in the pits. That's going to allow our leader to be the last car to come down pit lane. So rather interesting strategy call from him, and let's see if it will work out. Alita out and away, 9.2 seconds stopped in his pit stall, and 30.1 seconds down pit lane. Is he going to hold off the challenge from Addy? I think he will. Russ Addy maybe getting the short end of the stick in terms of the lap traffic encounters. We saw that moment with himself and Eugene Clark earlier on, so I think Russ Addy may have gotten hurt by that at the end of the day, so that gap between himself and Alita actually going to grow as a result of that early call to come into the pits. But hey, if you do the same as your rivals, you're going to end up behind them anyway, so you may as well throw something at the wall and see what sticks. And for Addy, it's not going to stick, but he's still on track for a pretty good P3 as Greg Gilman is about 5 seconds behind in fourth. And you can see right now David Riley still involved in this battle with himself and Leif Hellberg. Franz Josef Strum breaking away from that battle to be sure. It's now about 1 complete second between the 6th and 7th place cars, and right behind there's practically nothing between Riley and Hellberg. At least it was before Hellberg had a sideways snap coming out of turn number 5 a few moments ago, so that's going to affect him and his chances of battling yet again with Riley. These two currently battling for 7th, and based off the gap that he has now coming into the pits, it will likely remain a battle for P7 as De Pasqua making that call to come down pit lane. Let's see how it shakes out. It was about 30 seconds down pit lane for Alita, so this may have actually worked out really well for Alita. Only time will tell though, so let's see. Stopping in his pit stall right now, taking a very slow approach into the pit stall is your race leader. Certainly doesn't want to overshoot his box. That would be a fate worse than death, but he's already out and away. 9.5 seconds stopped. And there he goes. That is your race leader in the number 4 McLaren, exiting out with the lead. It's now 5 seconds between himself and Ricardo Alita. So actually, I will amend that 4.7, teetering around that 4.5 to 5 second window. Either way, though, certainly going to work out for De Pasqua. Lost out a little bit of time. Keyword being a little. Didn't lose out on a lot of time, did not lose out on the lead. He's still in a comfortable spot, and I don't even think he has the lap traffic to deal with at the front of this field as well. I'm actually going to take a look to see where Remigio De Pasqua's next thorn in his side is going to be. I believe it will be from David Bradley, who's about probably a half a kilometer, a little bit farther up the road. So that's not going to be too bad. There you can see him in that striking number 72 green McLaren heading his way. This is into turn number 9 right now. Meanwhile, your race leader of De Pasqua is heading his way through turn number 8 at the present moment. So that's bit of a cushion for De Pasqua for sure. Probably doesn't have a whole lot to deal with between now and the checkered flag. Very likely going to be on a Sunday cruise. Actually, we'll just say a Friday evening cruise. A bit more apropos for the time of day and the day itself, to just bring this number 4 McLaren all the way to the checkered flag, and it would be a lights to flag win in the process for De Pasqua. Just needs a couple more laps to hold on. Is running this race to a close right now. 5 minutes and 45 seconds left on the clock, but still enough time to give us some battles to talk about, and this may be one that we have to keep our eyes on. Leif Hellberg in that number 13 car. I gotta say, a very good looking number 13 car. He's been running an 8th as of late. However, Mike Grandy in the number 12 car. He's got one less number on his car, but he wants one less number in his position and get that move done on Hellberg to slip his way up into 8th from 9th. So let's see if Mike Grandy in that number 12 Corvette will be able to get that move done. That very nice looking red and white wheel and engineering car. That is a very slick livery to see on a Corvette. I would love to see that in real life. Those wheeling cars always look absolutely fabulous in the sim and in real life as well. We'll touch on the hard charger, which is still Roberto Di Filippi. He's up 3 spots where he started in this race, which is not cutting his way through the field like a hot knife through butter material, but that's still a pretty good amount of spots gained from the start to the finish in this race. And at this point in time, we are just bringing it home. But at this point in time as well, we got Hellberg and Grandy maybe got battle hard. Look at the amount of time that they spent in the pits as well, virtually equal at 9.6. So maybe it was just meant to be this way in terms of these two drivers being as close as they are from start all the way through until the finish. So this is going to be a fun one to be sure. It's been a fun one already to be sure, but I am really invested to see this battle. One driver in a McLaren, the other in a Corvette, and who's going to win it is the real question. I will quickly pull up the times that a lot of these drivers have been setting. We'll note that DePasqua is still comfortably in the lead, actually growing that gap at the front of the field as well. So he's looking to stake his claim on this race, and has certainly been doing it very, very well. But the point I was going to raise, talking about lap times and consistency between these two drivers, Leif Hellberg has not been very consistent thus far in this race. He's been having lap times that range between the 153s all the way to the 155s. His lap time a couple of laps ago on lap 16 was a 155.1, which is not ideal. In the past 3 laps, coming to 4 this time by, set a 155.1, a 154.6, and a 154.6. So not too bad in terms of the last couple of laps, but compared to Mike Grandy, who's been in the 153.5s, the 153.3s, and the 154.2s, there's clearly a pace differential between these two drivers, and looks like Grandy going to try and capitalize on that if he possibly can. But looking at that, he also got David Riley involved in this fight as well. We got the 14, the 13, and the 12 running in that order, ascending order in terms of their numbers, in descending order in terms of their numbers, ascending order in terms of their positions as it stands right now. So that's pretty funny how that stuff works out right now. So it was a 2-car battle. Now it's a 3, and you got 3 separate race cars, one in an Acura, one in a McLaren, and another in a Corvette. That's the thing with sports car racing. You just love seeing these different cars with their own little quirks, features, pros and cons, whatever way you want to phrase it, battle tooth and nail, go side by side into as many corners as they possibly dare. But there's not a lot of corners left to go in this race, with only 2 minutes and some change left to go on the clock. I believe our leader of DePasqua will be taking the white flag this time by, so only one more lap of racing action here at Motegi, and let's see how this battle is going to heat up. Hellberg a little bit sideways coming at turn number 9. Certainly not going to do him any favors at all in that fight with himself and Grandy. I gotta wonder at this point in time what these drivers are thinking in terms of their premier overtaking opportunities. Are you gonna try and go for it heading into turn number 1? Will you go for it into turn number 11? Who knows? Maybe are you just gonna try and all bump and run and go for it heading into the final corner? Only time will tell. I mean, sports cars, they're tough. They could take a beating. I mean, granted, if these cars were the road driving counterparts, you certainly want to beat them up like they're a bunch of stock cars, but I've seen enough MSITs to know that these drivers are going to use the durability of their equipment to try and gain as many spots as they can. I mean, believe me, been there, done that in the sim, so can't necessarily blame these drivers if they decide to go to that. The white flag in the air. Only one more lap of racing action here from Motegi. DePasqua on track for a rather dominant win. 4.3 seconds still in front of Alita. Russ Addy going to run at your podium in third as it stands currently, unless Greg Gilman can kick on the Hyperjets and close up that gap in the final breaths of this race. But this battle between Riley, Hellberg, and Grandy is the one that we've been keeping our eyes on as of late. I'm curious, who's going to be the first to bounce? Is it going to be Hellberg on Riley? Is it going to be Grandy on Hellberg? Or is it just going to be an absolute amalgamation of nonsense? Let's wait and see. 17 cars still out there on track. Won't have to worry about lap traffic for these drivers battling in this camera shot that we've got going on right now at the front of the field. It's not gonna have to worry about traffic either is DePasqua. I will say that gap slightly decreasing between himself and Ricardo Alita, but it's just gonna be too little too late for the driver of the 088 car to ring in your leader and maybe try and get a move done. Here we go though. Maybe gonna see some side-by-side racing off into turn number 11 in a couple of moments time. I don't think these drivers that we see right now are close enough to get it done, but at the front of the field, Remigio DePasqua going to take the checkered flag to win it here at Motegi. Ricardo Alita going to finish in P2. Russ Addy, he's going to finish a little bit farther back in third, running at your podium. As we take a look back at this battle involving Riley, Hellberg, and Grandy, it looks like they will stay line of stern, finishing 7th, 8th, and 9th overall. They were close to battling, however, they decide just to bring it home in their positions rather than risk it for the biscuit and end up chipping their tooth. Looking at some drivers finishing this race a little bit farther in the back, though. A clean one here at Motegi as DePasqua taking the checkered flag. And just waiting for some more of these drivers to cross the start-finish line. Ends up being 17 cars that cross the that will be taking the checkered flag at the end of this race of 19 starters, which I gotta say is a rather good record in terms of the hecticness that you usually expect around a track like this. The fact they were all able to get through this race surprisingly clean is pretty good. And when everything is said and done, it is a pretty good one here at Motegi, and we'll touch on the results and move into some interviews. Russ, hello, welcome into the commentary booth. We'll have a chat with you in a couple of moments. I gotta say though, hello Russ. It's been a little while since we had a chat, and trust me, we'll probably talk about that in the interview that we have coming up. But I'll move you into the interview waiting area here as we touch on the results at the end of this race. It's Remigio De Pasqua taking the checkered flag when everything is said and done. The Italian behind the wheel, the number 4 car, is your winner here at Motegi. Riccardo Alita going to finish in P2. Russ Addy, who we just had in the commentary booth a couple of moments ago, he is going to round out your podium in 3rd. We have Greg Gilman in the number 92 car going to finish in 4th. Roberto De Filippi's ends up in 5th. Franz Joseph Stump going to finish in 6th. David Riley in 7th. Leif Hellberg will finish this race in 8th. Mike Grandy will finish in 9th. Kenneth Dummer will round out your top 10. And looking through the final drivers we have classified from this race, we've got Jack Turner in the number 55 car finishing this race in P11. Peter Hallstrom ends up in 12th. Eugene Clark will finish in lucky number P13, and Gianni Rospaldo will finish right behind in 14th. Earl Setzer will finish in 15th. Jerry Kerr in 16th. David Bradley will end up in P17, and then running at the cars that are classified from this race but were a little bit farther back as a result of incidents earlier on, we have Frank Butler and JC Hay. So that will be your results at the end of this race here at Motegi, and we can move on into some interviews. And Russ, very fitting that you're the driver that we're having a chat with here, so welcome into the commentary booth. It's been lonely doing this broadcast all by myself, but looked like a pretty good one for you here at Motegi. Talk us through it.
Yeah, it was a good race. I'm normally an open wheel guy, but and the Italians are tough to beat in this car. The start was a little crazy with Roberto flying up through the middle, and I just had nothing for Riccardo and Remigio.
Yeah, it was just, I mean, I could see the different stuff that you were throwing at the wall all throughout that race, and the early call to come into the pits. I want to ask you about that as to whether or not that was a conscious call, just decide to do a strategy to kind of just throw something at the wall, see what stuck, or was that more a case of, hey, I already decided to do this strategy well before the drop of the green flag, and I'm just going to stick with my guts?
I was hoping that I could pit early and maybe, I'll say, not that Riccardo's going to get nervous, but maybe get him nervous running alone without me behind him. I knew I couldn't catch him. I'd gain and lose and gain and lose. I knew I was never going to pass him, so that was my only shot, I think.
Well, I'll tell you what, though, it was still a pretty good one for you here at Motegi, walking away with a 3rd. And I did dedicate a decent chunk of the broadcast to telling the viewers about our connection in real life racing. So don't worry about that there, Russ. And sorry if I put some words in your mouth. And actually, I will try and fact check myself from earlier, because I had mentioned the fact that around the time that I ended up buying your son's old kart, it was an S2000 that Griffin got in. Am I correct in that? Is my memory serving me correctly here?
That is correct. He got into S2000, sold it, and he's in California and bought another one. So he's been a S2000 guy for a while.
It shows you that some things change and others stay the same. And Russ, nice to have a chat with you for the first time in a little while. I think the last time we had a chat was the Al Holbert event for the Philadelphia region of the SCCA back in the summer. So I'm not as sunburnt this time that we're having a chat. So that's a plus.
Yeah, it's much colder out now. Well, good to talk to you.
Yeah, good to have a chat with you, man. And congratulations on the podium. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks. Catch you later.
And that right there was Russ Addy, your 3rd place finisher here. And see, folks, I wasn't talking out of my butt throughout that race, but we also got another driver joining us in the interview waiting area, that being Riccardo Alita. Riccardo, welcome into the commentary booth, and talk us through the race that we just saw here at Motegi.
Thank you for having me. Yes, it was exciting for me. Actually, getting a second place, I wouldn't even dream about it, but it happened. So, yeah, it was Russ behind me, and I was scared he was catching me up. I was doing some mistakes, and then he was getting closer. Then I concentrate and getting a bit far from him. But then when I came out of the pits, and he was 4 seconds behind, I thought, okay, it's only 5 laps. I think I can keep it. And so nothing major. And just tried to catch the first, but it was impossible. It was like 200, 300 faster than me.
Yeah, I gotta wonder what kind of nitrous he had in that thing, because he checked out at one point in this race, and I feel like our cameras had a little bit of a hard time keeping tabs with him, but still it was a really good drive from you all throughout it as well. And I want to ask you, considering the fact that you're our second place finisher, I have a feeling that your opinion on this definitely matters. What are your thoughts on this track here at Motegi?
It's a nice track. Never done it before. And that's why I've been practicing all week. So being old and retired, so I got time for it. And it came out really well. It's a nice, interesting track. Fast, straight. And yeah, there's a couple of fast quarter, but the rest is all technical. Really good truck.
Seems like Twin Ring Motegi getting the seal of approval from you, Ricardo. Thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth, and well done on the P2 result here today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you. Bye-bye.
And that right there was your P2 finisher of Ricardo Alita joining us in the commentary booth. And now it doesn't look like we're going to have anyone else joining us in the interview waiting area to have a chat with us at the end of this race. The 8th round of this 60-plus Racing Adventures GT3 season. Donington Park going to be the next round of this championship on Valentine's Day, and these drivers may be hoping to fall in love with that track. Donington, an absolutely wonderful ride in the world of motorsports, and I'm sure these drivers are going to be having fun. But as for this broadcast here tonight, that will just about do it. And so, for myself, Ron Mullins, and Hugo Louise doing a wonderful job working on the cameras in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching today's broadcast here on RaceSpotTV, and we hope to see you all wherever it is in the not-too-distant future.